Hey everyone, welcome to another Coffee with Kittl. I have Ash or Ashley. Which one do you actually prefer to be called? I forgot to ask you that.
You know what's funny is like in real life, like people I actually know call me Ashley, but like my business has always been called Ash Ulmer.
Ash,
So
yeah.
so everyone like online calls me Ash, but in real life, like my actual family and friends call me Ashley. So
Oh,
you can call me whatever. Either one's
okay. I
fine.
think Ash sounds cool.
Yeah.
Not like
It is cooler. Yeah.
it sounds like punk, rock or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Well, today we have Ash with us, and I've been following Ash for a while and her work, which again, all of her stuff's going to be down in the description for you guys to check out. But today we're going to talk about apparel design, and I know that's a thing that we talk a lot about here on the channel. Of course, we're big into POD, print on demand, for all of you. And by the way, if you all are just joining us, if this is the first Kittl video you're watching, I'm so happy you're here. And this is a great conversation we're about to have that's related to apparel design, starting a business, maybe even if you're getting into screen printing or something like that. Ash has a lot of knowledge on this. But before we dive right into questions and things to know and maybe some trends you've seen, maybe just give a little bit about yourself, maybe just a little bit of what you were telling me before,
Sure.
who you are, and then, yeah, we'll just dive into design as it relates to apparel.
Sure. Well, can I first just say, when you said POD, like print on demand, I thought you were talking about POD, the band, and I was going to get so excited. I
Oh,
thought you meant we were going to talk about POD. I was like, oh, I could do this. No. But yeah, my name's Ash. I am a freelance graphic designer from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've been in the industry since 2007. When my husband and I started a clothing line at the time that catered to kind of the underground, emo punk type scene. So we had a clothing line for a few years, and then it eventually transitioned into screen printing and did that for another few years. And then, and decided that wasn't for us. And so I ended up being a freelancer for the last, from 2018. So last 5 years or 4 years, 5
wow.
years. So I have a few retainer clients that I do work for weekly. And I have, obviously various clients that I do designs for like apparel designs, logos, illustrations, and things like that. But yeah, I love what I do. I work from home, and we have 3 sons and a bunch of animals. So I take care of all them and kind of hang out here.
Yeah, I'm like kind of hyped to see the bearded dragon you mentioned a little ago at some point, because that sounds, I'm all about anything that has the word dragon in it.
Oh yeah. She's huge. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
She's massive.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I know that we were talking just a little bit before we started recording, and you said something I thought was interesting about always designing with apparel in mind. And I think that's definitely a skill. I think that, obviously that's a skill you can learn over time. And that's maybe a thing with, what we do as Kittl with templates, where people have done that to think about apparel in mind. We have lots of templates to help people with t-shirt design.
Sure.
But it looks very different than it would be for a logo or something like that. So maybe if you can just start by talking a little bit about that, like unpacking, like when you're designing one of these design sets or flash sheets, or you get a commission or a client that's asking for a design, what are the key points or bullet points or thoughts that you have in your mind when you're designing something to make sure that it's going to adhere to apparel? I guess we're getting into the theory of that. I always give lots of tips on the channel, like make sure it's in a square and make sure the text is big, and those are all good. But now we're getting into like the meta of like thinking about adhering to apparel design.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, so when I first started, that was my goal in life, was to design stuff that went on. I mean, this was in 2007. So, I mean, graphic tees were huge back then.
Right.
And so like, that was always my goal, is to do shirt design. So, I mean, I've always just done that. And I guess when designing something, whether it's branding or an apparel design or even an illustration, I mean, I guess my style as well is I'm kind of like more, I would kind of categorize my style as like kind of like funky, like minimal though. Like I don't use a whole lot of colors. So I guess that's one thing in mind is like, cause I know like being in the screen printing industry before, like obviously we didn't want things to be a ton of colors, just because we were actually pulling screens and stuff. So I guess when I'm just designing something, I'm doing everything vector based. So it could be outputted at any point, but then also making sure to keep the colors at a minimum, which I like that style anyway. So it's not really a challenge for me. That's kind of like how I would make something anyway. And then it usually kind of like works well as a shirt design, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talk about color a lot as well when we're doing our tutorials on t-shirt designs, even knowing that things like print on demand or, you know, sites, companies you can order from like Custom Ink or something that are doing DTG, is less of a risk to talk about color, but we still like to do our best to rein it in terms of color. And your points about screen printing are even more so. And I've made those points before. If you're trying to create your designs and then do it yourself, order the screen, whatever, the ink, blah, 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 that could either get one, very time consuming, and two, very expensive. So what I'm curious about though, in terms of color, have you seen there be any either pushback or like conversion difference on like the limiting of color? I'm almost wondering if it's like almost better, even with having things like DTG, print on demand, whatever, where you can kind of go crazy with the colors, which is not a good idea. Like, I'm wondering if it's almost even better to limit those to 2, 3, maybe. Have you seen any difference? Do you see clients wanting more colors? Do you see the difference in sales or conversion or something like that?
When I'm designing something, just because that's kind of like ingrained in my style anyway, I personally think things look better when they don't have a whole lot of color, because like that's something I would wear. Like I wouldn't wear something that's like a ton of colors. So I kind of design it in that way anyway. I do have some clients who will ask me, you know, to add colors or to let's do this as like a gradient looking thing. But I'm still, when I'm doing that, I'm designing. So like, for instance, I have a client who she has a clothing line, and I did her logos as well as a few shirt designs. And one of the logos, she wanted it in color, but she wanted to be super colorful. But I was like, well, let's limit it to like 3 or 4 colors with like a gradient type print, because I know like if she was to take it to an actual screen printing shop, they could, you know, print it in one swoop by just like layering the colors, just because I don't know what it's called, but my husband would know, but I know that they can do that. So like, I'm always kind of designing with that output in mind. However, I'm not like, when I'm designing, I'm not like necessarily using like a Pantone book, like designing while I'm making something. But if we're to output it, then I would go in Pantone match, just because it's easier for me to just pick just a random color and just keep going. But yeah, I guess if that answers your question.
yeah, it makes sense to me. And I also thinking of like people that are either getting into design, beginning this or beginning this apparel design style. You want to be limited. You want to be careful with your colors. You risk distracting people from the design, which would not be a good thing.
Sure.
But let's also talk about placement, because I think this is also something that I maybe see people struggle with in terms of relative size of design and placement on apparel. So, and we haven't really talked about that much, at least on the channel, other than saying like, you know, if it's going to be on the back of a t-shirt or the front of the t-shirt, you want to try to take up the full frame. So what have you learned over these years of doing this about, you know, relative size, hierarchy, and placement on apparel, whether that's a shirt or a hoodie or the sleeve or a beanie or anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess over the years kind of learned, you know, through trial and error. Like I said, when we first started out in 2007, 2008, the style, like just even the style of prints were totally different. So like we would do like giant, like rib prints, like, you know, when that was cool back in the day.
Yeah.
But at the time we weren't printing the stuff. So I would just design it and send it to our screen printer. And they're like, no, like you have to make sure the actual shirt that you're using doesn't have a seam down the side. Because if it does, then we can't print
Oh.
that way. So like there were certain brands we would use. I think American Apparel at the time didn't have a seam down the side. So we would have them print there so they could just turn the shirt on the screen, or I'm sorry, on the palette and print it like that. But in terms of size, like I always, and this might even be outdated. Like at least like when we were printing, like we had, you know, our standard size screen was 12 by 14, I think. So whenever I'm designing shirts, even to this day, I just set my document size as 12 by 14 rectangle, just so I know like that would be the print area. And I've never really like, I guess having the background of having a shop, like I just know that like, hey, like we can't just physically, our screens anyway, we couldn't print like over the shoulders all crazy and things like that. And I know that some shops can, or even they could do like sublimation and that kind of stuff to like make them huge. But like my rule of thumb is I always just kind of keep it either like a big back print or a big front print, or like a chest, left center, or I'm sorry, center chest, or like, you know, collar or something like that. But I always try to keep it kind of basic as far as placements go, just because I know like when my clients take it to various shops, they have different capabilities of what, you know, they can do in their shop. So I always try to keep it simple so that hopefully they can output it, you know, the same.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think 12 by, you said 14, I think, or did you say 16? 12 by 14.
14.
Okay, yeah, I think that's like the overall end all safe metric. We typically do our templates at 16 by 20 because a lot of print on demand can now do that high, which is nice. They used to not be able to do that, but now they can go a little bit higher. Yeah. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially about giving it, if you're giving the design to a client, they need to be able to use it versatily against whatever printer they're going to take it to, I guess. So yeah, when I'm curious, like when you are out and about and you are either shopping or looking or just walking around and you see a shirt, what would be like your top things in mind where you're like, that's a good shirt. Like that is a good design for a shirt.
Yeah. You know, like me, like style wise, I like things that are more minimal. So like if it's like, you know, I love a good left chest print with something on the back, like with not a lot of colors. But honestly, I don't do a whole lot of graphic tees. I mean, once in a while I will, but either that or it has to be something that like the actual design, it could be like ridiculous. Like so for instance, I have this like shirt. I actually got it at Walmart and it's a Chevy, like a Corvette or something like that. It's just like an old, like vintagey looking shirt. So like something like that, I'm like, oh, I like the nostalgia of that, even though it's like so gaudy and it's like not really something I would normally like. It just depends. So I guess either the design itself is like something that I like draw like sentimental value from, or it's more minimal and just kind of clean.
Yeah, no, that I mean, I resonate with that. My personal vibe is all about the vintage, old, traditional tattoo type stuff. So that makes total sense. And I'm telling you, like people, I think maybe sleep on Walmart's tees a little bit.
They got some good stuff.
They've got some bangers over there. Yeah, like especially also in the anime world, because I'm a big anime fan. They've got some real nostalgia, like old anime stuff like that.
That's cool. Yeah.
When so kind of in this same thread, what do you see, or what do you maybe do the most of or asked for in terms of the amount of text and illustration is what I was trying to say. Like text heavy or illustration heavy, or like 50-50 or 70-30. Like what maybe have you done the most of, and or what maybe our clients even asking for right now?
Sure.
In terms of like, how much type or text? Obviously this depends on the project. I totally get it, but just maybe a ballpark average.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Like I can even go through like the time frame. So like when I first started, it was definitely very graphic heavy, like as far as, you know, because it was a lot of the work that I would do was bands we would work with. So a lot of, they wanted like drippy zombies and like big old huge
Grunge,
prints. Yeah. With, you know, even the text was, they wanted it very animated, like drippy looking and things. So it was almost kind of 50-50, but the text would be like the band name and then a giant graphic. And then I saw it kind of shift. I mean, and I think that also kind of went with my style shifting as well. Cause like I started becoming more like minimal looking designs. So then it kind of shifted to, people wanted more so like an illustration with just minimal text with it, like very small text type of thing. But then I've seen it kind of shift back a little bit where I would say it's a little bit of like 50-50. Like sometimes people want just text. They like want like a phrase or whatever, or they want some type of illustration or badge or, you know, strong like piece in the middle with like some arched text over the top. So I guess it depends on the project, but yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both. Like it just kind of depends on what the client wants.
Right. Yeah. And I think what we've seen is a, you know, kind of a renewal or a bringing back of like Y2K and streetwear-esque stuff. Like that's been so big on like not just YouTube, but like TikTok, Instagram. You'll see it's for whatever reason, it's actually a lot of kids doing like starting their own little streetwear brand or whatever. And it's very like punk Y2K, you know, text that's sideways and like big graphic or something like that.
Sure.
So I mean, what else would you say if we were to like pull on that thread and say like this kind of stuff is like coming back, so like watch for it, or like this is, you know, a trend that can like have longevity behind it, so like maybe like an evergreen trend or something like that?
Sure.
Like what are you noticing? You know, maybe not, it doesn't have to necessarily be client work, just like what you're seeing or what you're feeling. Like what would you say style wise?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I've seen a lot of like the Y2K looking graphics, and more so like what I've noticed anyway is the graphics seem to be getting smaller, like as far as size wise. Like more similar to that of like I picture myself in like 5th or 6th grade, like the type of shirts we would wear was like literally it'd be like a graphic in the center that was like 6 inches wide, like, but it's like either more so like logo based, like, so like I picture, I don't know how old you are, but there was a store here that was called Gadzooks, like that I picture is like the style right now. Like there's very much like they're graphic, but they're not giant prints. Like they're like little placements, or like you said, more like streetwear ish.
Right.
I've noticed that a lot. I haven't done a whole lot of that, just a little, maybe a little bit of that kind of style. I love that style. I think it would be fun to do that kind of stuff. But actually I would say even the last couple of years, it's more so big, full back prints.
Full back. Yeah.
Yeah. And then small front. Like I haven't done a whole lot of huge front prints like for a while, like probably a couple of years. But again, that might just be, and I think a lot of times, like even with client work, is they're not even necessarily telling me like, hey, we want a massive front print. Like they don't tell me like what they want it to look like. They just say, hey, run with it. And I think I kind of put in my, like what I would prefer. Like I would prefer a large back print and a small front print. And then they end up kind of, you know, doing that, or we place it on the front or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of what I've noticed in recent years.
That's interesting. I've not thought about kind of bridging like a streetwear-esque or graphic tee-esque design with minimal placement. That's really interesting. I think I see what I would see the most of, I think of that is like a shirt that's either on the left chest or in the center of like a floral, like or a botanical or something like that.
Sure.
Like I see a ton of that style. And maybe, yeah, I don't know. I would say style wise that I think is going to be always trending forever would be like a retro style.
Sure.
So in that kind of vein, other than like, let's say this nostalgic kind of vehicle car shirt that you mentioned earlier, what would you say is like most popular if we think of a word like retro?
When I think of like retro, I think of, or like vintage, I think of like vintage cars. I think of even like I bought a shirt again from Walmart of like Dolly Parton's face, like that I would picture that like retro. Like it's still simple. It's just like a one color print, but it's just her face. Stuff that I love to create is like, I love like vintage retro, like 60s, 70s kind of look of
Yeah.
stuff. I love that kind of stuff. Not necessarily all of my clients do, but yeah, I don't know. I guess like, but what I've seen trend wise, I would see more so it's like the kind of like the cars and the, you know, almost like brands reviving themselves kind of. Like they're almost bringing back designs they had in the 80s, 70s, 80s and just reprinting them. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's kind of what I've noticed.
Yeah, I've noticed it a ton as well, and one other one that's kind of still in the retro and still in that 60s 70s area that you're mentioning is like just text but wavy text. Wavy retro. Like if you type that in on Etsy, days and days of pages of that kind of design on Etsy and stuff
that's
like
so
that.
true. I've done so much of that it's always female clients though. Like I've never had a male be like, do this for me. It's always usually I feel like I could categorize the client. Like the client who would want that is like a millennial aged woman who has like clothing lines. Like they all love that. Like as far as the
I would agree.
Text warp that looks kind of like like beachy you know, vintagey vibe. Yeah.
On the flip side, what's the thing that you would see? And I mean, maybe you just the vast majority of your clients are women, but like on the other side, what would be the design style or the one thing that you would see the most of that like men would be asking for?
Definitely more minimal.
Minimal, okay.
Like left chest print type of thing. Like I picture like a lot of like the style that I do. I mean, I don't feel like recently in recent months, but I mean the last 10 years, my style it's a lot of almost like dark imagery, but that has like a lightness to it. So like it'd be like a skull with flowers or
okay. Yes.
Like you know what I mean? Like it's like almost like like I said, like a darker image that has like a hope to it. So yeah, I feel like a lot of times those kind of designs do really well with men, as far as maybe not even necessarily on apparel, but just I've noticed that they enjoy that type of design more. Like if I'm designing for my male clients, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And like I thought about that just as I was remembering a conversation with another collaborator that we did Coffee with Kittl yesterday, and she does Etsy, tips, selling, stuff like that. And there was a question that someone had asked about like, Etsy being primarily like, women facing designs really. And she made a good point that was like, well, women still go to Etsy for gifts for men.
Yeah.
So what you just said of like that kind of style that men would like, hopefully people are already getting an idea of like, oh yeah, that's true. I have seen them wear that. I could do that. Post a listing that's like gift for men. You know what I mean? It's like not everything has to be geared towards, retro wavy text or whatever, because it's like very tough to compete with that.
Sure.
But if we transition to talking about screen printing for a second, I still know there are a lot of people that like to do this. I think that it's obviously a more difficult startup type thing than like print on demand, where it's very easy, where you can just create your design, upload it, and when someone does a sale, they get it in the mail and the fulfillment center takes care of it. Sure. But what would your advice be for those that want to get into the nitty gritty and like, I want to do this myself. I want to source the blanks myself. I want to make sure the quality of shirts is good, the prints are good or whatever. And I really just want to focus on 2-3 designs that I can pump out a bunch. So what would you say are the first steps and best tips or practices for getting screen printing set up?
Sure. And so it's funny because I'm not like, as far as like the technical side of screen printing, I will botch that all day long. That was totally my husband's side of it. So I've literally never pulled a screen in my life, never cleaned a screen, nothing. So I didn't do any of that side of it. But I know like the way that we started out is we originally got a 6-head press. And then eventually it turned into an auto and all that stuff as we grew and stuff. But I mean, I would say honestly, probably the best thing is to YouTube, like what you need as far as supplies, how it works. I mean, it is a lot of work, but anybody can do it. Like, you know, you don't have to have any sort of education. Like anybody can do it from their house or their garage. I mean, so I don't know. I guess you would want to research, and then I would start out with maybe even getting a press from somebody, like look on Craigslist to try it out first. Like don't go buy a big brand new auto. Yeah. Cause it's really expensive. And plus, you know, I don't know, just in case it doesn't work out or whatever, but yeah, I would start small and see how it works. And if you like it, then, you know, eventually grow and continue to do that. But yeah, it definitely takes a lot of work as far as building up a shop and even a dark room and all that stuff. So, but I mean, it is cool. And we did enjoy it. It was fun at the time. It was just a lot of work. So, yeah. After a while we were just like, nah, we're over this. But yeah, I mean, he enjoyed it, and it was, you know, it's fun. It's like, it's an art form in a sense. So, you know, that was a creative outlet for him at the time. So it was awesome. So,
and what do you think would be the typical, I don't know, starting costs for that? Like, I feel like I've watched a bunch of videos kind of in that thread just to do research, and it's like, well, it looks like it could be everything from this to this, depending on like if you're trying to go super DIY and just like pull it on a table versus like having, you know, the heads and all this other stuff. So I don't know, like what would you say is like a range of like, so if you want to do it right, here's an actual, I don't know, cost that you're
ballpark.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. Oh, I don't even know. Cause when we got our presses, it was, gosh, like, so it was, you know, 10 plus years ago. So the cost is probably so different. I do know some brand names, so you can definitely look up. Like I remember, as long as they're still around, I'm pretty sure they are, was a brand called Ryonet. They would sell screen printing presses, and I know that they have them as small as just like a one station. Yeah. And you can try that out. I don't know how much they are. I would say probably a couple $100 for a one head station.
That sounds right.
But for more than that, I would say probably a couple thousand to get everything set up and get all the screens and get your washout booth and a dark room area. Like obviously you have to have a space too to do it, you know, like a garage or storage unit or something like that. So gosh, I don't even know. I would say a couple thousand for sure.
Yeah. I would say that that's probably accurate. I think the screen printing like that, you know, with actual ink, doing that process right is 100% an investment. Now, there is a little bit of a difference in heat press, which is still a press. Did you do anything with that, like heat transfers, or did you do any in that, or was it pretty much just kind of the ink screen printing?
Yeah. They did. So at the time, foil prints were huge, like as far as like the gold and the silver. So they would do that stuff. And actually, like our guys were, I think the second, I'm gonna toot their own horn for a second. I think they were the second company in the US at the time to print live events. We were the second company to do that. So they would do heat press at live events to cure the prints. So because we couldn't obviously bring our dryer with us, so they would use like a heat press to dry the print, I think. I'm not really sure. I might be botching this because like I said, I didn't do any of that side of it. I don't really know. But I do know I have a hat press that I use now. And I have, you know, vinyl heat transfer that I cut with my Cricut, and I make like little trucker hats and stuff. So that's like my knowledge of heat press is my little hat press I have. But yeah, they definitely did some heat press stuff back in the day for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that, you know, that's a good point about the Cricut actually, because there are people starting to, you know, create their designs, cut them, and do them with heat transfer. And that was another thing. I lost it, but you when you were talking about the 12 by 14 size, I think the largest press, because I have a Cricut press, and I think it's 9 by 12. I think is the heat, you know, what you would put on a shirt or something. But I think the largest one is 12 by 14, maybe. And maybe there's a bigger one. I don't know. I'd have to go check like the Cricut store or whatever. And I've seen the hat press before as well. But yeah, that's always a good, I feel like some people could start and make this big old design printed out on Cricut and then realize that the heat press is like not gonna adhere the whole thing. So you'll have to do it in sections, which is just a pain.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. And I think like my Cricut, because I have the Cricut Maker 3, I believe, and I
have the same one. Yep.
Yeah, and I think the biggest, unless I just don't know how to do it.
It can keep going. It can keep going like vertically, but it but it can't do more than 12. Or at least I haven't seen one. Yeah, I haven't seen one. Even that is slightly a pain. Doing anything more than 12, or let's say maybe 16 inches long. I think those are the two stock Cricut mats would be 12 by 12 and then 12 by I don't know, maybe 16 or something like that.
Sure.
But yeah, that's clearly more affordable, right?
Yeah.
But you're limited in color. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you're doing multiple color on your hats or if you have advice for doing multiple. Yeah, it's usually just nominal kind of one color design, which is a good place to start. It's good to hear kind of realistic ballparks, though, for people that want to get started with this. And obviously, there's a difference between what it was years ago and years now. But the advice about getting some used stuff is really good. So kind of like the last question on my mind for this would be the types of apparel that you either have done the most of or see the most popular as it relates to, like, you know, heat press or screen printing or whatever. You know, obviously shirts, I think, is obvious. I think that's like clear. Yeah. But the item that you would say is second most, you know, is it hat? Is it beanie? Is it hoodie? Like what's the most popular apparel piece?
Second to shirts, I would say, and I think it's kind of changed over the years. So for a while, I feel like tote bags were huge. I feel like tote bags are kind of coming back now.
I think they're coming back.
Hoodies in the wintertime, I get requested that a lot, like, or like fall, like going into winter when people are producing that. And lately, or not lately, I'd say the last couple of years, I've noticed it's more so pullover hoodies, not zip hoodies. Not many people would request a design on that. Hoodies or tote bags, I would think.
Really?
Behind shirts, maybe some hats.
So you don't get as much.
Lot.
Yeah, I was wondering if you would get more hat or beanie designs, just because I feel like hats are like one of the second most. I don't know. It's almost like you can own a lot of shirts and you can own a lot of hats. I don't know why that comes to my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah. Sometimes I do. Sometimes people request that. I mean, probably 99% of the time it's shirts. But yeah, sometimes people do. Not a whole lot. But I mean, I mock, like, as far as like the actual product brands and stuff, like, I don't really know, just, you know, not being in that industry anymore, like what's popular now. But I know, like, for me, the one that I've seen requested a lot in the last 3 or 4 years is Comfort Colors. People are always saying, mock it up on Comfort Colors, whatever, some random weird color they have. But I, like, as far as mock-ups go, I love Bella Canvas, like just their models. I always mock stuff up on them just because they look nice. But as far as brands go, I don't know. I don't even know what's popular right now.
No, I think Comfort Colors is 100% at the top of people's radar, I would say. There's a lot of print on demand offering that, as you know, they're kind of like suggested maybe. Well, I think the Bella Canvas for sure and Gildan are always at the top, just because I think they're a little cheaper. But I have been pleasantly surprised with Comfort Colors quality. I also just think it's really soft. Which is always good.
Do you guys ever hear of the brand Toltex anymore? Is that even around anymore?
Oh, no, I've never heard of that brand.
Toltex. Yeah. Okay. That was like when we were basically at the time, that was like a competitor to, it would be like, I guess, a cheaper version of Bella Canvas or American Apparel at the time, which I don't even know if I don't even know if American Apparel is around anymore, because I know there was a lot of scandal with that. But
I haven't seen it. I've seen Lane 7. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No, that's crazy.
Lane 7 is like, so we have another collaborator. His name is Rich. His channel is Hustle Ninjas, and he does lots of like screen printing and vinyl and puffy vinyl and stuff like that. And there's a video where he talked about Lane 7 a lot. And so my brother and I ordered some just to see, and we really did like the quality of the Lane 7, especially if you are going to want that really thick, heavy cotton. I feel like that's another trend, like especially in the younger crowd. They love the really heavy, like like it literally has ounces on it, like how heavy it is, like 8 ounces or something. That's a lot of weight, I think. But yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah, but in terms of like other ones, there's just so many. Like now I can scroll on providers pages, and I feel like there's just so many shirt or hoodie providers now.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe there wasn't kind of back in the day, but I mean, it feels like everybody's making shirts.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, there definitely was a lot, but like there was a handful that we would work with. But yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, I definitely seen that too. Like a lot of people want the thicker cotton boxier tee, but I mean, it goes back. It's the same. It's like the 90s. That was cool in the 90s to have the thick, shirt. But then as it changed, early 2000s, everybody wanted the thinnest tee possible. Skinny tees, like, nothing boxy, fitted. And then it turned into long tees. Everybody loved like the long body tees, NF type of style. I don't know if those are still cool now. Those might still be cool. I don't know. And then now I feel like it's very much like boxy, and then female style is more so like the cropped, either like the baby tee or like the boxy crop tee is huge, I feel like. But
yeah, I remember in middle school, the athletic fit was like everything had an athletic fit version. So like the shirt or whatever would say standard, or it would say athletic fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and the athletic fit obviously was much more sleek or whatever.
Sure.
I guess more form fitting or whatever. So yeah, it is. You're right. It is interesting because I don't know. I'm caught up in a lot of other stuff, so I never like think about the way that shirts sit on your body. But you're right. I mean, they are baggier now, I think.
Yeah.
So we've seen that style come back, I guess.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as when I'm thinking like boxy, I'm thinking more so like a men's style. But then also I feel like women, like that's huge right now too. It's like giant tees, like almost as oversized, like a dress, tees. like oversized. Yeah. Those are huge. But then also the little tiny little tees are back too, though. So I don't know. So it's like a little bit of both.
That is true. Yeah. It's a black box. I mean, who knows?
Right.
Sweet. Well, this has been awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us and give your insight just over like your experience doing something like going through having a screen printing business. That's really cool. And hopefully some of these insights are stirring people's minds about what they can create, what maybe they want to search if they're looking on print on demand, or maybe if they're going to order blanks. What kind of things are popular, oversized, heavy cotton, things like that. Is there anything else that you want to leave people with, maybe how they could find you or follow your work or check out what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. So you could find me, best place, my website is ashulmer.design, or you can find me on Instagram at ashulmerdesign. Those are probably the two places I'd be most. But I appreciate you having me here. This has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone, please don't forget to subscribe to Kittl. It'll take you just 1 second. It's a red button right there. 1 second. And we hope you all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Now, if you want to see other tutorials using Kittl, I have these videos here on my right that I know you're going to enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos and features and things like that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.